The
Yeah.
NBA trade deadline is only a few weeks away, and of course, the New York Knicks and Giannis Antetokounmpo are still very much linked to each other. But with a recent report that just came out, there very well might be a real lane for them to end up landing Giannis before the trade deadline. I'm your host, Dylan. That is my co host, Johnny. This is Fireside Knicks, and let's jump right into it. So obviously, with the trade deadline coming, the New York Knicks are going to have a lot of different decisions to make, especially on a few key players. And some of those few key players include guys like Mikal Bridges, Karl Anthony Towns, and a couple other guys. But as far as Giannis Antetokounmpo is concerned, I want to jump into a report that came out from NBA reporter Mark Stein, where he said that the Portland Trailblazers, in fact, do have some interest in Mikal Bridges. Now, if that in fact is true, it can open up a lane to make a three-way trade for the Knicks to end up landing Giannis, especially if Giannis to the Knicks becomes very serious. So, with that being said, what I want to jump into is, we know how Mikal Bridges has been this year. We know he's kind of having a bit of a confusing season. He was really, really good at the start of the year, really effective on both ends of the floor. He was efficient. He was playing really good defense, doing a lot of the things that we, paid him to do. But lately, it has been kind of the opposite of that. He hasn't been scoring the ball as much as we would like him to do. In fact, he's only scored 25 or more points just one time this year, and he's only scored 20 or more points like 10 times this year, and he's played every single game. It just has not been the type of production we want on the offensive side. The defensive side it hasn't been bad, but it hasn't been like, elite. We want him to be elite at point of attack. Unfortunately, he is not that kind of defensive player. He's more like a free safety, which is fine. But even that has kind of dropped off a little bit. We saw against Philadelphia on Saturday was really the kind of moment where I think a lot of people realize that Bridges' role in this team is kind of, I don't want to use the word useless, but kind of just weird. Because, he was 3 for 16. He had only 9 points. But, we saw when he came out of the game, they ended up having a huge run. Same thing happened with Karl Anthony Towns. Literally the moment that they took Karl Anthony Towns out of the game, Mitchell Robinson came in and they riled off a 25-9 run, which ended up being the type of run that propelled them to a win. Even though they only won by 3 points, that run right there is what won them the game. And it was pretty stunning to me that it happened with Bridges and Towns off the floor. Now, obviously, it can happen once in a while, no matter how good or bad your team is. But it's been kind of that trend all season, where those kind of guys are not on the floor and they end up having better stretches of play. So, Johnny, what I want to ask you is, with this Giannis stuff coming out, the Trailblazers' interest in Bridges, what do you think the Knicks should do? Do you think the Knicks should really, jump on this opportunity if it in fact is true?
Yeah, you have to jump on this opportunity. Giannis wants to play for the Knicks. That doesn't happen. Superstars don't choose to play for the Knicks. And now you're getting a guy who on day one would be the best player in your franchise's history. You need to be fully on board for this. I don't care how many picks you have to send Milwaukee's way. I don't care if you have to trade Cat, Mikal Bridges. Make it happen. And with this new report about the Blazers having long-time genuine interest in Mikal Bridges, there's a real path for the Knicks to land Giannis because the Blazers own the 2028 and 2030 first-round picks of the Bucks. Those are very, very valuable picks because during that time in 2028 and moving forward, the Bucks are probably going to be pretty bad. They're going to want to tank, but right now they don't own their picks, so there's no real reason for them to tank. But say we trade Mikal Bridges, say it's a 3-team deal. We have the Knicks, the Bucks, and the Blazers. Say we send Mikal Bridges to the Blazers. We send Cat to the Bucks, and then the Blazers send those 2 first-round picks from Milwaukee back to Milwaukee. That's a really, really good deal for the Bucks because if you're able to reacquire your picks, you're able to go into a full tank now because you own your picks. You're going to have, the first-round picks regardless of how bad you are. It's not going to be sent to the Trailblazers, even if you're like the worst team in the league. So the Bucks can go into a real tank if they reacquire these picks. And I think that's a real lane for the Knicks to go down. I think they're more than open to trading Cat. But we're kind of just waiting to see if Giannis is available. And we've had so many reports around the league that teams are waiting on trade deadline moves to see if Giannis becomes available. And this guy has shown a genuine interest in joining your team. The only team it seems like he wants to join is the Knicks, and you have that leverage to use. People will say, and it doesn't really make sense to me, oh, the Nets will have a better offer. The Hawks could have a better offer. Giannis is going to choose where he wants to go. People need to understand that this is the best player in Milwaukee Bucks franchise history. He's going to choose where he wants to go. And if he wants to go to the Knicks are going to make it happen. Leon Rose knows what this opportunity is. And if the Knicks can trade Karl Anthony Towns away, Mikal Bridges away, and the Bucks can acquire Karl Anthony Towns, who is an all-NBA player at his best, maybe a few other contracts, and then reacquire those picks, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. So whether it's over the summer, whether it's before the trade deadline, and I saw one thing where I'm not too sure if this is 100% true, but I think it is. If Giannis isn't traded before the deadline, I don't think he's eligible for a Supermax extension. I'll have to dive more into that, but that could be a real, kicker for Giannis. He's going to want to get his money, and the Knicks would obviously offer him a long-term deal, because why would the Bucks, or why would Giannis choose to be sent to the Brooklyn Nets or the Atlanta Hawks like I used earlier if he's not going to sign an extension with them? It's all right in front of us. It's right in front of us for the Knicks to acquire Giannis. Make a 3-team deal with the Blazers. Mark Stein wouldn't report that if there's nothing really going on. There's a reason he mentioned the Trailblazers when talking about Giannis and the Bucks. So Giannis, the Bucks, and the Knicks, of course. So I think there's a real way the Knicks land Giannis, and I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities for it to happen before the deadline. I really don't think it is, because the Knicks have proved they don't need Karl Anthony Towns to win. They don't need him at all to win. And Mikal Bridges, as you said, he scored 25 points or more one time this season, and he's not playing like the defensive player of the year caliber player he was in Phoenix. I really don't think the Knicks need Karl Anthony Towns and Mikal Bridges. And if you're getting Giannis in return, I mean, come on. You can't pass up on this deal. You cannot.
Yeah, I've said that for as much time as ever, that, how often does a superstar like Giannis actually say, hey, I want to go play for the Knicks? That never happens. I mean, exactly. Like, no superstar really ever sits there and says they want to play for Knicks. As you just said, KD and Kyrie both chose the Nets over the Knicks in that 2019 summer. They chose the Nets. Obviously, we know how that ended up, boiling out in flames and stuff like that. But as far as Giannis goes, I mean, the Knicks have an opportunity right here to make something happen. Now, of course, other teams can easily jump in and make a trade, and at the end of the day, the Bucks organization here, could easily just send them off somewhere else, because Giannis, while they probably will give Giannis the say, technically, in theory, they can trade him anywhere they want to trade him to. But Giannis will end up guiding this one. He's going to be the guy who's going to be like, I want to go here. Let me go to this place, or let me go to this place. And we know that the tensions in the Milwaukee Bucks locker room are only getting more and more tense as the team continues to lose games. Now Giannis also got injured. He's going to miss a few weeks. But that, even beside from that should not stop a team from trading for him. We saw Luka Doncic got traded last year while he was still injured, and then he eventually came back, and then the Lakers were doing what they were doing. So we know that injuries are not going to stop it. There might be people who are going to say, oh, but he's going to miss a month, this, that, and the other. Doesn't matter. It don't matter. If you have an opportunity to make a trade for this guy, you do it. Especially given how much better your team can be if you do it. I mean, like you just said, against Philadelphia on Saturday, we saw Bridges and Towns were off the floor during their best stretches of the game. They were off the floor for that. Landry Shamet was providing a bigger impact. OG Anunoby played minutes down the stretch of the game, and he played very solidly in those minutes. So that's obviously not me saying that they can, rely on that. No, but it's proof that they can still win games if you give Jalen Brunson 4 defenders around him. And then if you add a guy like Giannis, who is an elite defensive player while also being an elite offensive player, averaging 30 points despite not having a jumper like that. I mean, guys, they would be a legitimate threat to the Oklahoma City Thunder or any other Western Conference contender. They would be. That would be a legitimate title squad right there if you gave Jalen Brunson, Giannis Antetokounmpo. But moves on to my next point. If they were to make a move for Giannis, obviously that. Okay, well, like I was saying, as far as Giannis is concerned, we see that, like, if they make a trade for him, it's gonna affect Karl Anthony Towns. Obviously, it's gonna make he would obviously end up going the other way, and possibly Mikal Bridges. It ties into what I want to talk about with Mitchell Robinson as well. But I also know that there's so many different moving parts that could occur because Mitchell Robinson's contract is almost up. We know Deuce McBride very soon has one more year left on his deal after this year, and then he will enter free agency. And Deuce McBride is going to want a bag. He's getting pocket change for the production that he provides. But Johnny, I want to really, get your input on a lot of different things here, but especially, looking ahead to some of the guys we currently have, such as Mitchell Robinson and stuff like that, because we know that they did not extend Mitch in the summer. So could a trade for Giannis, impact those kind of negotiations? That's what I really want to get out of you on this one.
Yeah, and before I jump into that, I want to make a point. Giannis is one of the best two-way players ever. He won a championship with Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday as his second and third options. Put this guy next to Jalen Brunson? I mean, come on. We have never seen something like that. And OG Anunoby seems like he plays his best basketball when Karl Anthony Towns and Mikal Bridges aren't on the court. I mean, come on. You have a trio of Giannis, Jalen Brunson, OG. That's enough scoring. That is enough scoring. Giannis will give you 30 points a night on like 70% from the field. This guy,
it's not rocket science. To the people that always say that Brunson and Giannis wouldn't be a good fit, it's not rocket science, people. That would be a nasty pick and roll duo. Nasty.
Yeah. And people will say like, oh, it didn't work with Dame because Dame's a ball dominant guard like Jalen Brunson was. Jalen Brunson played his early career with Luka Doncic. Like, he could do it. I fully believe Jalen Brunson can adapt, and Giannis makes this team incredible. I mean, that's cinema. Giannis
and I want to jump in on that. Brunson and Dame are at two different stages of careers too. When Damian Lillard joined the Bucks, he was in the later stages of his career. Durant is still an elite player. He was at the later stages of his career. Jalen Brunson is in his prime. This is the best version of Jalen Brunson right now, and he gets better every year. So it's not the same. It's really not. And plus, the supporting cast is much better right now with the Knicks squad than it was when Lillard went to the Bucks. So big difference.
Yeah, completely. I mean, the Knicks will still have great role players. Like Josh Hart will still be in the conversation, most likely, if we trade for Giannis. We'll still have Deuce. We'll still have Landry Shamet. There will be guys that we could surround Giannis with. And I think this defense becomes so much better if you have Giannis next to OG. I mean, that's ridiculous. Two guys who could guard 1 through 5. I still think OG Anunoby is arguably the most well-rounded defender we have in basketball in terms of he's able to do it on the perimeter. He could guard, a crafty point guard and then go guard a Joel Embiid. There's not many guys that can do that. And now you're adding Giannis to that as well. This team needs to bite on an opportunity to get Giannis. But to, go about your other point, talking about Mitch and his contract extension and Deuce, Leon Rose is going to have some big decisions to make soon because Deuce McBride next year is going to make like $3.5 million. This dude's going to demand a lot of money. Mitchell Robinson, is he going to demand more money? He's only making around 12, 13 in that range this year. So the Knicks are going to have to make a lot of big decisions. Now, for example, in a fantasy world, say we get Giannis and maybe we get some salary filler and expiring contracts in return. And then heading into the 2027 season, we have Giannis and then a little bit more money to spend. Dylan, I want to ask you a question. If we have the money to spend, would you extend Mitchell Robinson long term? That's my question.
If they have the money to do it, and if they end up moving on from, say, Cat, and they bring in Giannis, and you have the money to extend Mitch, I think you do it. And this is coming from someone who said back in the summer that they should sell high on Mitch and look to trade the guy because I was very concerned about his health. I was concerned about really just his on-court impact. We've seen there have been spurts this year where he's been slower on defense. The rebounding hasn't always been there. It's been good for most of the season. I want to make that clear. But there are spurts where you feel like, okay, now he looks compromised, right? But we also see many stretches where you go, the Knicks aren't winning that game unless Mitchell Robinson does this and this and that. So when you consider all those things and you consider the type of impact Mitchell Robinson regularly provides, it makes me really wonder if you bring him back, you extend him for I don't know how much money, because I really the money thing is what really concerns me at times, because I even think $15 million for a year for him is, or however much it is a bit much. You know what I mean? It's not that I think it's like a massive overpay, but considering that the guy is, strictly a rebounder, strictly a defensive player, which don't get me wrong, is extremely impactful. But given that he can't do anything on the offensive end other than catch lobs, that makes me wonder if it's worth that kind of money. However, if you have the money to do it, and there's no other big free agents out there that you have, or there's no other serviceable replacements out there, then you do it. Then you definitely do it, especially if you trade for Giannis. Now you can have a lineup, regularly of, say, some combination of Brunson, Deuce, OG, Giannis, and Mitch. That starting five right there would be elite. Elite. I would even argue that is probably the best lineup in the Eastern Conference. And it's not even really trying to go against, Karl-Anthony Towns and Mikal Bridges. They're very talented players. I just don't think that they exactly are the missing pieces, if you want to call it that, to winning a championship. I don't think the Knicks can win a title with Karl-Anthony Towns as your number two. I just don't. I think you need to have a guy like Giannis who, in essence, would become your number one if you were to trade for him, and then Brunson be your two, but kind of like a Batman and Robin here. You know what I mean? I don't think Karl-Anthony Towns is really good enough to be like someone you can win a championship with as your number two. That's really what I got to say about all that, though. I kind of want to get your input on that before we do wrap this up.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. It really depends on the price for Mitch, because I don't want to overpay on a guy where we really don't know if he's going to be hurt. And I don't like, would you, let me ask you one thing, and then I'm going to, get to my next points. Would you start Giannis next to Mitch?
That's a good question, but I feel like you might have to, only because I don't think Giannis wants to play center. I know he's tall enough to do it, and we know he has the rebounding numbers and the defensive numbers to do it. That the size and stuff is not the problem. Is he going to want to play center though? Are the Knicks comfortable with playing him at center? That's the thing you have to wonder, because in theory, a Mitch and Giannis front court would be so elite defensively and so elite rebounding, but you're also compromising some shooting. But however, with how good Giannis is at attacking the basket, it makes me wonder if it would work or not. And I see you had your finger up, so I see you want to interject. So what were you going to say?
I do want to say one thing. Giannis won. Well, I'll talk about that in a second. Yeah, I'm not also sure if he wants to play center. And I don't know right now, say if we get Giannis, I'm okay with letting Mitch walk, because as we saw with the Bucks when they won their championship, Giannis played the 4. Brook Lopez played the 5, a guy who could stretch the floor, shoot the basketball, and can defend a little bit, right? So I just thought of this right here, right now. Would you be open to somehow making a blockbuster move where you get Giannis and Miles Turner? Because Miles Turner and Brook Lopez, they're pretty similar.
Personally,
I know it would be difficult, but
I'm going to interject on that. Personally, no, I'm very much against the idea of adding Miles Turner because of the contract. Miles Turner's making about $100 million or something like that. And Miles Turner is a solid NBA player. He's not a $100 million player in my eyes. And I don't think he's exactly good enough to, I think if you add him, you bring in Giannis and you bring in Turner, it almost feels like to me it would defeat the purpose of moving on from Cat for that reason. Because I get it. Turner's a solid player, can stretch the floor, great defensive player. The contract is ridiculous, though. I'm sorry, but it's just the contract really, really is what avoids it for me. Now, would I let that stop me from getting Giannis if it's possible? Not necessarily. I wouldn't let it stop me. I just wouldn't choose to bring in Miles Turner. If they can find a way to, make a trade for Giannis and then make a separate move for a different center who can floor space and defend, if that's what they're really prioritizing, then I think they would be better off doing that if there's some available out there. I don't know. The contract really just it concerns me.
Yeah, it goes up from $25 million this year all the way up to only $29 million in 2028 and 2029, but that kind of limits you in what you're going to be able to do because Josh Hart will be a free agent around that time in 2027. So what do you do with Josh Hart? There's a lot of moving parts. Yeah, I don't obviously think Miles Turner's going to be traded to the Knicks. Don't get me wrong. I don't think that's going to happen, but yeah, man, Giannis does everything for this team. And I'd be so open to trading Cat, Mikal Bridges, and however many picks the Bucks want, because I think that's a realistic possibility if Portland gets involved.
You probably have to move on from like a Tyler Kolek or something as well, but I'm doing that.
I will pilot Tyler Kolek to Milwaukee myself if that's what needs to happen, bro. Like, I'll do that with Cat and Mikhail. That's how much I want Giannis. This is a franchise changing move, man. It needs to happen. It needs to happen. This guy wants to be a part. I can't emphasize that enough. Giannis Antetokounmpo wants to be a New York Knick. He is telling this to the media. Everybody knows he wants to be in New York. He wants to play for a big market. He loves Madison Square Garden.
We saw it too in his post game the other day. They asked him if he thinks he'll still be in Milwaukee in a couple weeks, and he was like, I don't know. So even he knows his time's up.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it happens before the deadline. I really wouldn't. It's getting really, really bad there. And
yeah, it's such a shift in the narrative too, because even just as soon as a few weeks ago, a lot of people were saying he probably won't get moved just because it's very difficult to move a superstar mid-season. We know this.
Yeah.
A lot of big moves that involve a superstar always occur in the summer, right? Yep. But with the situation that's brewing in Milwaukee right now, no pun intended there with the Milwaukee Brewers, but the situation that is brewing in Milwaukee, we know how it's just getting more and more tense as the days are going on. It looks like it's really going to happen. Now, will the Knicks end up with him? I don't know, but I really hope they do. Before we do wrap it up, I want to give you an opportunity. I was about to give you an opportunity to get any final thoughts out before we do wrap this up.
Milwaukee, make the trade. Make it happen right now, because say you trade Giannis, you get your picks back from the Blazers, you'll have Karl Anthony Towns' contract expire by the time the 2028 and 2030 picks come around. You'll still have guys like Ryan Rollins to build around.
I'll even counter, though, that contract could be a reason they won't do it. But
that is a thing. It's kind of like it might be the reason they don't do it. It might be, whatever. But because I don't know if they're going to be interested in Cat, because the contract is bad. It's really bad. And it has, it has a couple, one or 2 years. He's got
Trae Young value, and he's making $4 million this year.
It's going to go up to 60. It's going to go up to 60, which is crazy. And that might be a reason they don't want Cat, because they want to get this rebuild going. But I don't know, man. If Giannis really wants to be a Knick,
it really, at the end of the day, depends on if the Bucks want to win right now, if they still want to compete, or if they're just full on we're rebuilding, we're moving Giannis, and we're going to target young players and draft picks. That's really what it depends on, because if they're targeting that, they might not want Cat, and then therefore it's going to make it tougher for the Knicks to make a trade. But if they're willing to acquire Cat and then make another, say, winning move, because I know they've been hinting at wanting to make some winning moves, if they end up doing that, then you have an opportunity.
Yeah, and say you get those 2028 and 2030 picks back. Say you trade for Cat. Maybe they're not fully, not wanting him. Maybe they're kind of open to trading for Cat. A year or two down the line, before you get those picks going and before the rebuild fully starts, you could trade them for expiring contracts, like we saw with Trae Young. And then by the time those picks come around, you have a boatload of money, and then you start that tank, and you have some top picks and money to work with. So it's kind of okay, are they completely not wanting this Cat contract, but at the same time, they can maybe flip it for something down the line. So we really have to see. There's a bunch of moving parts in this deal. Obviously, it's a Giannis trade. Some crazy stuff's going to happen, but man, the Knicks need to do it. That'd be one of the greatest days ever. Simple. Yeah,
they simply need to do it. And if the Blazers have the interest in Bridges, as we outlined earlier, you can really get it done. You have a lane. But I do think this is a good place to finally wrap the episode up. We really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let us know what you think about Giannis and Bridges and any of these trade target candidates that we've outlined in the comment section below, because we would love to hear about it and talk with you guys about that stuff. You can follow us on all of our social media platforms. We are on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, of course, this YouTube page that you just watched the video on. This is Fireside Knicks. I'm your host, Dylan. That is Johnny. We'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace out, and let's go Knicks.